They sit in the corner, say almost nothing, watch everything. You think they are shy. You think they are awkward. You think they are missing out. You are completely wrong. You believe quiet people are quiet because they have nothing to say, because they lack confidence, because they are socially anxious or uncomfortable in groups. You think their silence means they are not engaged, not paying attention, not important to the dynamics in the room. You barely notice them because they barely speak. But quiet people are not silent because they have nothing to contribute. They are silent because they are collecting information you are too busy talking to gather. While you are performing your personality, managing your image, competing for attention, trying to be impressive, they are watching. And they see everything. They see who interrupts whom and who allows it. They notice whose opinions shift based on who else is in the room. They observe who performs confidence but reveals insecurity through micro-expressions you miss because you are focused on your own performance. They recognize the dynamics you are embedded in but cannot see because you are too busy participating to observe. Quiet people have psychological advantage you do not understand. They are not trapped in their own head managing their presentation. Their attention is outward, observing patterns, recognizing inconsistencies, reading what people reveal when they think no one is watching. By the time you notice the quiet person in the room, they already know more about you than you have revealed to anyone else. Their silence is not weakness or social failure. It is strategic positioning that gives them access to information you never gather because you are too busy broadcasting to receive. They watch you perform, compete for attention, try to be impressive, manage how you are perceived. You call this social skills. They see it as exhausting performance that reveals everything you are trying to hide. Here is what quiet people understand that you do not. The more someone talks, the more they reveal. Not through what they say, but through how they say it, what they avoid saying, what they emphasize, what they deflect from, how they respond when challenged. Every word is data point. Every story is confession. Every joke is defense mechanism made visible. While you are performing, trying to be funny, trying to be smart, trying to be likable, quiet people are watching the performance and seeing through it. They notice that you tell certain stories repeatedly because you need others to see you in a specific way. They observe that your humor is deflection when conversations get uncomfortable. They recognize that your confidence is overcompensation for insecurity you cannot directly acknowledge. You think you are successfully managing your image. You think your performance is working. But quiet people see the desperation underneath the charm, the insecurity underneath the confidence, the need for validation underneath the stories about how well you are doing. They see what you are actually communicating while you think you are controlling what you are communicating. They also notice what the group cannot see because everyone is performing simultaneously. Who competes with whom for dominance? Who defers to whom and why? Who is genuinely confident versus who is performing confidence? Who is actually listening versus who is just waiting to talk? The quiet person sees the entire ecosystem while you are just trying to position yourself favorably within it. This is why quiet people often seem to understand social dynamics better than people who talk constantly. Not because they are more socially intelligent, but because they are observing while you are performing. They have access to information you miss because you are using your cognitive resources to manage your own presentation instead of gathering data about what is actually happening in the room. You think the quiet person is socially awkward because they are not contributing to the performance. Actually, they are psychologically sophisticated enough to recognize that observation provides more useful information than participation. They have chosen to watch rather than perform. And they are learning things about you that you do not know about yourself. They hear what you actually said, not what you meant to say. The slip, the contradiction, the tell. You call this overthinking. They call it listening while you are not. Quiet people notice the inconsistencies you create because you are talking too much to keep track of what you have said. You tell one version of a story on Monday and slightly different version on Thursday. You claim to value one thing, but your behavior demonstrates you value something else. You present yourself as one type of person, but your actual choices reveal you are a different type. Most people miss these inconsistencies because they are not actually listening. They are waiting for their turn to talk, planning their response, thinking about their own stories. But quiet people are listening carefully to what you say and watching what you do, and they notice when these do not align. They notice every contradiction, every exaggeration, every subtle adjustment to the story based on who is in the audience. They hear what you reveal accidentally. The slight bitterness when you talk about your friend's success. The defensiveness when someone questions your choice. The need to justify decisions you claim you are confident about. The places where your voice changes, or your body language shifts, or your eye contact breaks. These are moments when truth leaks through the performance, and quiet people catch all of them because they are not distracted by performing themselves. They also remember what you said last week, last month, 6 months ago. They track how your story changes, how your stated values shift, how you adjust your presentation based on context. Most people do not notice because they do not retain enough information to compare across time. But quiet people are building a comprehensive model of who you actually are versus who you present yourself to be, and every conversation adds more data to the model. This is why quiet people can predict your behavior accurately. Not because they are psychic, but because they have been paying attention to patterns you do not recognize you are creating. They have months or years of data about what you actually do versus what you say you will do, about how you actually respond versus how you claim you respond. You think no one is paying that much attention? You are wrong. The quiet person has been paying attention the entire time. They see the power dynamics, who defers to whom, who controls the conversation, who pretends not to control it. You call this natural flow. They see it as structured hierarchy you are unconsciously maintaining. While you are participating in group conversation thinking everyone is equal and it is just friendly discussion, quiet people are observing the power structure. They notice who interrupts and who gets interrupted, who suggests an idea that gets ignored until someone else suggests the same idea and suddenly it is brilliant. Who speaks and everyone listens versus who speaks and people talk over them or check their phones. They see that the person who says the least sometimes has the most power because others wait for their approval or validation. They notice that certain people's jokes get big laughs while others tell better jokes that get polite smiles. They observe who makes eye contact with whom when something important is said, who seeks whose reaction, who looks to whom for permission or approval. These dynamics are invisible to people performing in them because you are too focused on your own position in the hierarchy. You are trying to assert your status, trying to get your contributions recognized, trying to demonstrate your value. You cannot observe the structure because you are embedded in it, trying to navigate it without consciously recognizing it exists. But quiet people stand outside the performance enough to see the entire structure. They recognize who actually has influence versus who is pretending to have influence, who is genuinely respected versus who demands respect that is not given, who is included in decision-making versus who is informed after decisions are made. This observational position gives them strategic advantage. When they choose to speak, they know exactly whose support matters, whose opposition is dangerous, whose opinion will shift the group. They understand the ecosystem well enough to navigate it effectively when they choose to engage, while you are just reacting based on immediate social cues without understanding larger patterns. The quiet person is not socially unaware. They are more socially aware than you are, which is precisely why they speak less. They have learned that observation provides better information than participation, that watching reveals dynamics that performing conceals. They have chosen to be audience to your performance because audience sees things performers cannot see while focused on their own lines. They notice what you think you hid. The moment you faked interest, the flash of anger you suppressed, the comparison you tried to conceal. You call this subtle. They saw all of it. Here is what you do not realize. Micro-expressions and subtle reactions are only invisible to people who are not paying attention. And quiet people are always paying attention. While you are focused on what you are going to say next, they are watching your face when someone else speaks. While you are thinking about your own response, they are observing how you actually react to information before you control the reaction. They see the contempt that flashes across your face before you smile politely. They notice the envy in your eyes when your colleague mentions their promotion, even though you congratulate them warmly. They observe that you check out of conversations that are not about you, even though you pretend to be engaged. They recognize when you are performing interest rather than feeling interest. They also notice the things you do not say, the topics you avoid, the questions you deflect from, the moments you change the subject. Most people are too focused on what is being discussed to notice what is not being discussed, but quiet people track the avoided territories and understand that what you will not talk about reveals as much as what you will talk about. They read your anxiety in ways you think you are concealing, the way you over-explain when you feel defensive, the way you become more talkative when you are nervous, the way you seek validation when you are uncertain, the way you become aggressive when you feel threatened. You think you are managing these reactions, but you are just managing them enough that inattentive people do not notice. Quiet people are not inattentive. This is why quiet people are difficult to deceive. Not because they are suspicious or paranoid, but because they observe carefully enough to notice inconsistencies between your words and your nonverbal communication, between what you claim and what you reveal, between your controlled presentation and your uncontrolled reactions. They are not looking for lies, they are just paying attention, and lies become visible when you pay attention. You cannot hide from someone who is actually watching, and quiet people are always watching while you are busy performing. They understand you better than you understand yourself. They see your patterns, your defenses, your needs. You call this judgment. They call it recognition of patterns you repeat without awareness. Quiet people know you are going to react defensively to criticism before you do it because they have watched you do it 20 times before. They know you are going to sabotage the relationship before you do it because they recognize the pattern they have seen you enact in previous relationships. They know you are going to make excuse rather than take responsibility because that is what you always do when confronted with your own contribution to problems. They are not judging you, they are recognizing patterns. They have observational data spanning months or years about how you actually behave versus how you say you behave, about what you claim you want versus what your choices reveal you want, about how you say you are going to change versus whether you actually change. They can predict you because you are predictable once someone is paying attention to patterns rather than accepting your narrative. This is why quiet people are rarely surprised by your behavior even when you surprise yourself. When you finally blow up at someone, when you suddenly quit your job, when you end your relationship, you experience these as spontaneous decisions. But quiet person saw you moving toward these outcomes for months through small signals you were broadcasting without awareness, increasing irritability, growing resentment, accumulating dissatisfaction, building justification. They also understand your defenses better than you do. They recognize when you are intellectualizing to avoid feeling, when you are performing confidence to hide insecurity, when you are creating drama to distract from real issue, when you are people-pleasing to avoid conflict. You think these defenses are working, that they are concealing your underlying issues. But defenses are only invisible to people who are not observing carefully. The quiet person is not psychoanalyzing you or trying to figure you out. They are simply paying attention over time and recognizing that humans are pattern-based creatures who repeat the same dynamics over and over while believing each instance is unique. Your patterns are visible to anyone who watches long enough. Most people do not watch. Quiet people do. This is why they seem to know you better than people who have known you longer. Time is not the same as attention. Quiet people give attention, and attention reveals everything. They know when to speak, and when silence is wiser. They understand the value of timing, the cost of unnecessary words. You call this being shy. They call it being strategic about when their voice actually matters. Quiet people are not silent because they have nothing to say. They are silent because most of what people say is unnecessary, is repetition, is performance that adds no real value to the conversation. They have learned that speaking constantly dilutes impact of speaking occasionally, that words have more weight when used sparingly, that silence cannot be used against you the way words can. Watch what happens when quiet person finally speaks in group conversation. Everyone stops. Everyone listens. Because their words are rare enough to be valuable, because they do not waste speech on performance or status jockeying, because they typically only speak when they have something that actually advances the discussion rather than just positioning themselves favorably within it. They understand timing that people who talk constantly do not understand. They know that saying difficult truth too early means it will be dismissed, that saying it too late means the moment has passed. They recognize when group is ready to hear challenging perspective versus when they need to let the group arrive at conclusion on their own. They can read the room well enough to know exactly when their input will be most effective. They also recognize the cost of speaking that you do not calculate. Every word is commitment. Every statement can be challenged. Every position can be attacked. Every revelation can be used against you. Quiet people understand that silence is safer than speech, that you cannot be misunderstood if you have not spoken, that you cannot be held to positions you have not articulated. This is not cowardice, it is strategy. They are choosing their battles, choosing their moments, choosing when their voice actually serves purpose beyond making them feel heard or important or acknowledged. They are not performing participation for participation's sake. They are speaking when speech actually matters. Meanwhile, you are talking constantly, diluting your impact, creating commitment to positions you have not fully considered, giving people ammunition to use against you, revealing far more than you intend. You think the person speaking the most has the most influence. Often, the person speaking the least has the most power because they understand the strategic value of selective engagement. They carry the burden of seeing clearly, of knowing what others do not know, of recognizing patterns people want to deny, of understanding truths people avoid. You call this overthinking. They call it the cost of paying attention. Here is what no one tells you about being the quiet person who notices everything. It is exhausting. It is lonely. It is burdened to see clearly when everyone around you is performing and pretending and maintaining comfortable illusions. It is isolating to understand dynamics that others cannot or will not see. They watch someone get used and exploited while everyone else thinks the relationship is healthy. They recognize someone is lying while the group believes the performance. They see problems developing that will become crises in 6 months, but no one wants to hear about it now. They understand that the dynamic everyone is maintaining is unsustainable, but everyone is too invested in the illusion to acknowledge the reality. And they must decide, do they speak and be labeled negative, cynical, judgmental, or do they remain silent and watch the predictable disasters unfold while knowing they saw it coming? There is no good choice. Speaking makes you the problem because people hate messengers who deliver unwelcome truths. Staying silent makes you complicit in outcomes you predicted but could not prevent. This is why quiet people often seem sad or distant or disconnected. Not because they are incapable of connection, but because genuine connection requires being able to see each other clearly, and most people cannot tolerate being seen clearly. Most people need their illusions protected, their performances validated, their self-deceptions maintained. Quiet person who sees through all of this cannot provide that validation without lying. They are also exhausted from holding everyone else's secrets, from knowing things people have revealed without meaning to reveal them, from carrying information about others that those people do not know they have shared. Every unguarded moment, every micro-expression, every contradiction, the quiet person sees it and must carry it. The clear seeing that gives them advantage also creates barrier. They cannot unsee what they have seen, cannot unknow what they have learned about you, cannot pretend they believe your performance when they have watched it closely enough to recognize all the ways it contradicts your actual behavior. They are permanently outside, observing, understanding, carrying the weight of attention that most people are protected from by their own distraction. Quiet people are not quiet because they are shy, not because they are awkward, not because they have nothing to say. They are quiet because they are watching, and they see everything you are trying to hide. While you are performing, competing for attention, managing your image, trying to be impressive, quiet people are observing. They see the desperation underneath your charm, the insecurity underneath your confidence, the patterns you repeat without awareness, the inconsistencies between what you say and what you do, the power dynamics you are embedded in, the micro-expressions you think you suppressed, the defenses you think are working, the predictable outcomes you are moving toward without recognizing it. They understand you better than you understand yourself because they have been paying attention while you have been performing. They know what you are going to do before you do it because they recognize patterns you have repeated dozens of times. They see dynamics you cannot see because you are too busy participating to observe. Their silence is not weakness, it is strategic positioning. They have learned that observation provides more useful information than participation, that watching reveals what performing conceals, that speaking constantly dilutes the impact of speaking occasionally. They know when to speak and when silence is wiser. They understand the cost of words that you do not calculate, but their clear seeing comes with price. They carry the burden of knowing what others do not know, of recognizing patterns people want to deny, of seeing clearly when everyone around them is maintaining comfortable illusions. They are isolated by their observations, exhausted by their attention, lonely in their clarity. You think quiet people are missing out, are not engaged, are not important to the dynamics? You are wrong. They are the most engaged people in the room, just not in performing. They are watching. And by the time you notice them, they already know more about you than you have revealed to anyone else. Next time you are in room with quiet person in the corner, remember, they are not shy. They are observing, and they see everything you think you are hiding.